Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Estate with Ryan. So excited to be with you on a Saturday, talking our favorite topic, a little real estate in the East Tennessee housing market. Hope everybody's had an amazing week and starting off a great weekend. Thank you for taking time and tuning in with us. As always, we value your time. We try to make this show insightful, up-to-date news in the housing market, kind of a little humor, a little fun with it, as always. So we got news in the housing market. Feds hold the rates steady. What the decision means for the mortgage rates moving forward in the East Tennessee housing market and across the U.S. The Federal Reserve kept interest rates unchanged at a rate of 3.5% to 3.75% as the central bank policymakers balance the sticky inflation with a strong labor market. Today's decision to hold the rate steady was widely anticipated, despite the pressure from President Donald Trump on his newly appointed Fed Chair, Kevin Warsh, to deliver a rate cut. So that was the news on the housing market. The Feds met the other day. It seems like we're always talking about the Feds. They might as well be the hottest real estate listing in the housing market, the Feds. Fed's going to do this. Where's the interest rates going? Nobody knows. And so we go on. And so if you're watching a little bit of the news or catch some highlights of what happened, projected 27, maybe rate increase, 28, maybe one decrease. So don't know what that means, but we know the housing market is moving and there's opportunities in the housing market, whether you're buying or selling. We're going to talk about positivity in the housing market, but the Federal Reserve does not control interest rates. So important to talk about that and understanding that a lot of that in the housing market we've seen over the years, we say the Feds meet, the rates change, kind of like the stock market. Something happens, the rates are in control. But a lot of those rates or interest rates are padded in a combination of other factors. So just a week ago, we saw rates down really competitive. I had a great client that was looking for a VA loan, and they had rates in the mid-fives. Some conventional rates right around 6%. Haven't had a chance to check on those today, but that was compelling. You know, and buyers in today's market, in the summer season, they're 6% is a good rate. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, if you're in the sixes, it's an opportunity. Not for sure where we're going to go with the rates moving forward, but we talk about it all the time. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about interest rates and things like that, but in the housing market today, we have the ability to refinance. It's a strong key. In today's housing market, where we have more supply than we've seen a little bit in the housing market, and so we have more opportunities. And that's probably bigger than the interest rate. You know, a quarter point here or there, yes, it all adds up to the affordability factor. And it's challenging because when you look at the news and the housing market across the country, food's gone up, gas, groceries, eggs, right? You name it, consumer goods, appliances. I think appliances I saw the other day went down about 1.4%. But as a whole, it seems like everything's going up. My daughter's got a great game. She's got a little game coming up here for the World Championships in Knoxville, believe it or not. And we're going to get some shirts printed for them. Well, we thought about getting some shirts printed. Ended up spending $500 for shirts. I'm not sure if we were going to do that. So, T-shirts alone, $500 for a couple of T-shirts. These things are increasing. So, but it's the cost of that across the board. So we're looking for those in the housing market, and you say, how is it balancing today's market, Ryan? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk more about in today's market that we're a seller or a buyer. Do you expect to pay closing cost? Who's paying closing cost? What is closing cost? And in today's market, are sellers paying that? Some information there may surprise you. We'll talk about what do we do when the housing market slows down? Market's a little bit slower. What are we doing to market, Ryan? What are we doing to sell our property? What's the emotion like as sellers and buyers embody this housing market? We talk about that and so much more. But I've got some new listings before we get going too far, get long-winded, as always, right? Get to going. We've got some new listings on 610 Towey Falls Road in Tellico Plains. Beautiful property. I just was talking to the seller 2 minutes ago. It's been in the market 2 days. We have over 6,000 views in 2 days, several saves, and our marketing's working. So if you got great property, acreage, reaching those out-of-state buyers, we got the solutions here to help you. And then I got a great new property out on Big Springs Drive, out in Greenville. That will be live here in the next couple of days. So a lot going on. Just talked to an investor a few minutes ago about a great 4-unit in Knoxville area. That could be coming up on the market as well. Straight perfect for a 1031 if you're doing a coming from another property. Got several clients as we approach the middle of the year that are selling their assets but don't want to pay Uncle Sam. You can't blame them, right? And so they're looking to exchange property, whether it's Knoxville housing market, severe market, markets across the country. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, 1031s are a great opportunity to defer any tax gains. And opportunities if you're selling or if you're off the market and you pulled your home off the market and you say, well, Ryan, the market's not as strong as we'd like it to be. That's true, but we have more buyers entering the housing market than we've seen in a long time. And so because of that thing, we're not going to pay Uncle Sam. So we got a combination of, you got your first-time buyers, right? Have your investors. Then we got investors that are selling property and changing out for a combination of reasons. Then you got your move-up buyers. You got your one-ended buyers where they're selling and they're not buying something else. And you got people transferring. So just a combination of that housing market we're seeing could be a great opportunity to sell. We talked about last week. If you listened to the show, if you didn't, I wanted to kind of reiterate on that. Selling this summer as a seller, regardless of the market and the rates being exactly where we want, is a 4 to 6% advantage as a seller. We talked about that last week. 4 to 6% versus the fall market. Now, we love our fall market in East Tennessee. It's it is one of the most beautiful times in East Tennessee. We get a chance to go around the whole area. We do a large amount of business here. And so if you see me, I'm over in Knoxville, I'm in Hardin Valley, I'm in Oak Ridge, I'm in Sevierville, I'm in Dandridge. I said, Ryan, how do you get to all those places? That's a lot of mileage on my car, and we go through multiple ones. But it's a great opportunity to explore East Tennessee. And you can see why so many people are moving to our great area. Hills, lakes, schools, sporting events, just privacy. And then the ability to regulate your business in an economy today that I was watching on the news the other day, and of course, it goes a little bit sideways on what we're talking about. But I thought it does kind of correlate with the housing market. If you're a sports fan like I am and watch basketball, you may have watched the NBA playoffs here recently, and you may have found that the Knicks won the championship, and haven't had a championship in a long time. Lots of fans were excited. Not sure the series was the best, but it was great for the Knicks and then the New York City housing market. It's housing market, but I was thinking housing market. But in that New York market as a whole with sports fans, may be good for the housing market as well. But, one of their top players came from a city that had no tax. Texas, go figure. Had no tax. And in New York City, not only do you have a state tax of 10%, but they have something called a jock tax. So if you don't live there, they're going to charge you 3.8%, I believe, at least 3% plus on your income. Well, these guys are making millions. And so that's a lot of revenue to live in New York or play for this franchise versus the Texas franchise that he came from. So I thought that was pretty insightful. Really look at why East Tennessee, our governor, our state, what we were doing, I think has caused a lot of people to reevaluate that and make East Tennessee home. So we're excited for that. Excited for the summer. It's hard to believe that's going. Let's talk about, what should we talk about first? Let's talk a little bit about in today's housing market, should your buyer pay closing costs or are they going to ask for that in the deal? Is the seller paying that? It's something that's most people wouldn't even talk about. Over a year ago, closing costs, those are buyer's costs. And really just with one word, no, Ryan, I'm not paying any closing costs. And that's realistic in the housing market that we've coming from. The market was really strong. Closing costs was not even an option. Sometimes inspections were not even an option. Just getting the property under contract was a true win in the last couple of years. But now have things changed a little bit. And buyers are in the housing market and feel like they have more opportunity to negotiate, be on terms. With the inventory that has grown, it is now being normal, part of the process, or somewhat having that conversation that buyers are now asking for some form of closing cost or assistance in the transaction. Now, we sell some large properties. We sell some of all. But some of our larger properties, you're not coming in and asking for $10,000 or $20,000 in closing costs. You just don't see it. I've got a $3 million home. We're not going to do it at VA with $10,000 in closing costs. So, look, we've got so much more in the second half. We'll have fun with that right after the break. We'll see you. Please stay tuned.
When speed matters, every second counts.
Wow, that was fast.
In real estate, speed is an advantage.
In football, speed is crucial.
In softball, speed is game-changing.
If you want your home sold fast,
Trust Ryan Coleman and his team at Hometown Realty for fast results.
Thanks, guys. Go Big Orange.
Hometown Realty is East Tennessee's #1 real estate group and a proud sponsor of the Vols.
I'm Ryan Coleman with Hometown Realty. The real estate market's changing every day. You need to know your home's value in today's market. Text your home address to 290-2290 for an instant, no obligation home evaluation. That's 865-290-2290. And remember, when you're ready to sell, we have a guaranteed sale program to get you in your next home stress-free. Trust your hometown experts. We've helped thousands of people just like you. All right, we're back at it, Real Estate with Ryan. Thank you guys for staying tuned. It's a busy show coming right out of the break. It's always hard to hit those marks, but thank you for staying tuned. We're talking about the housing market. We're talking about, should you pay closing costs? Closing costs as a seller? Ryan, get out of here. So we're talking about that, and we're kind of coming on the break. So, but before we get going, 60-second Vol update. Go make it quick. Drum roll, please. Our Vols are not in action right now, but a lot of things are moving. Football is right around the corner. ESPN just ranked that our recruiting class for the basketball season, we're ranked #1. So a lot of news there. See some move on the softball front. Lady Vols coming in, some Lady Vols coming out, some new rosters added. Should be an exciting season. I know I'm ready for some football. Just a couple weeks away. It's hard to imagine. Make sure now, it's hard to believe, in a couple weeks, we'll be letting you know that, hey, we're going to be giving away tickets. We're going to be letting you know about the new games, new schedule. And all you have to do is simple. I tell my team it's very simple. Log on our page, like, share, and follow. Make sure you give those to a friend. Get ahead of the game. We're sold out. Tickets are hard to find, but we've got you covered. All that because you guys listen to us and put up with me for a few minutes here. Now, we appreciate you so much. My team does. Thanks for the support. As always, Hometown Realty, proud sponsor of the Vols. That is my 60-second update. So we're kind of in season. If you're playing high school athletics, it's a dead season. So if you're playing ball, my daughter plays middle school ball, it's a dead period. And a dead period means you really just can't have any contact. You can't really be doing any activities. But in a matter of weeks, that goes by. So, we're in a little bit of a dead period right now with sports. But in a couple of weeks, we'll be firing back up. So, as we were saying, closing cost, market, how is that relating to today's housing market? So let's break it down. We're even talking about what are closing costs. Closing cost, it sounds... Remember, guys, some of you guys have bought houses a lot. And I know you guys are experts and have bought a lot. But most people, if you're thinking about buying or selling home, have done that a couple of times in their life. And all these terms on closing cost and appraisals and different things, some of it may sound very new. Or maybe you've done it once or twice, like my father-in-law 45 years ago. And they bought that property, and he just doesn't remember the whole process, doesn't understand the whole process, especially when it comes down to paying for things and how things go. And I think one of the biggest things that we get into, bless it, we're selling a home. And it's one of the hardest moves we got. We talk about it. You're buying, you're selling. You got to get involved in that process. And then you have a sweet client. And they say, Ryan, well, I have 30 days to get out. Well, sure you do, honey. We're going to make sure you have time to get out. But, in our state, we're going to take care of you, by the way. But in our state, in this area, it's very common that if I'm buying and I'm selling, right? Ryan, when I close, I want my house. I paid a lot of money for this. It could be $500,000, $600,000, $1 million. I want to get in my house. No offense. You've been a good seller, but I want my property. And so that makes it very challenging. So we want possession at the time of closing. So most people don't really realize that, or they think about that. And really, when we go through our mind and think about all the moving costs and the time and coordinating everything that's involved, and if there's a loan involved, and closing costs and inspections, and then, oh, by the way, Ryan, then I've got to buy my next one, and we got movers and coordinating, it can be very stressful. And so we know that. And so keep in mind that during that process, we'll walk you through it if you're working with us, obviously, and make sure you're taken care of, but it can be stressful. So those closing costs that break down, as I was saying, is, title fees, appraisal fees, surveys, loan origination. If you're borrowing money, the lender's going to charge you a couple points for it. Maybe a discount point, maybe this or that, but there's some fees involved. Closing cost, as a rule of thumb, I really say our rule of thumb, if you're getting a loan, 3% is probably a variance of 2.5 to 3% of your loan amount. The higher the loan amount, usually you could probably get by with 2%, but it just depends. Are you escrowing? Sometimes of our closing cost, we have 6 months of escrow for our insurance, right? We have 6 months for our property taxes, insurance taxes. Those things are usually important, and the lenders are requiring those. Sometimes they may require you to pay a whole year up front. It just depends on the properties. So these are things to think about. With buyers and sellers in today's market, now they're asking 2 to 5%. Some builders, right, you're seeing in today's market, some builders are what? Doing buy downs. I said, Ryan, what in the world is a buy down? A buy down in today's market is where I'm actually buying your interest rate down at a lower rate to get that rate. So if I'm at 6.5% and I want to buy it down, that lender may say, Ryan, it's going to cost you 1%. Well, if it's $600,000 house or $600,000 loan amount, they go off the loan amount, then that could be $6,000. So $6,000 to buy it down. Well, Mr. Buyer said, well, I'm not paying that. We'll let Mr. Seller pay that or throw it in the offer. And you say, oh boy, is that where we're at? No, but we see that. And we're seeing that in today's market. And today's affordability, obviously, it's a challenged market. And buyers in today's market, cash is limited. And it's one of the major hurdles that we're finding for buyers across the country. Not only can they afford their monthly mortgage payments, but the cash up front to close on it, to make it make the deal work realistically. What are sellers saying across the country? You may say, no, ain't going to happen, and I agree with you. But most sellers we did a survey, that 67% of people are reported paying some of the buyer's closing costs, if not all, and this is at the end of 25. So more sellers that you see today are paying some form of closing cost. And we're seeing that a lot with a lot of homes in your area, obviously. Some reasons that you may consider to pay closing cost or may consider other options in the housing market. There's a lot of homes, a lot of supply. Each of these things come in, and blessed, I had a new listing that came in, and we really had a meeting. Just kind of getting off topic. That's why you love this show, I hope. We're just talking about a little bit of everything, but had a great client that came in, and we just listed property, and he started talking about AI. And really, I love the guy. And he said, well, Ryan, AI says this, and this is where we came with this. And actually got out of a contract with the other agent. And he said, basically, he had some rebuttal, right? Some rebuttal back and forth on thoughts of the market and what Chat GPT or whatever said. And I said, okay. I mean, we use AI in our business. We're very tech savvy. We're very strong in the marketing. We're on top of all that. And I think the experience he had before was that, some of his concerns in today's housing market and some of the things that the computer or the robot's saying, right, wasn't matching up. And poor thing, the other agent just said, God bless you. I can't deal with it. And that's, but as the market changes, as the market slows a little bit, today's housing market, what are some of the things that we can do to help our sellers and our buyers and understand that market. First and foremost, we had a list of things that were wanting to be done. Understanding that with the consumer, ultimately, you guys, you're the boss, man. I just work for you guys. We want to make you happy. But ultimately, presentation makes a big difference. I mentioned we had one property, 6,000 or 7,000 views in just a couple of days. Well, a lot of good preparation, a lot of good marketing behind the scenes makes a big difference. Things on closing costs to think about. If you're looking to sell, these are some questions of inventory, repairs, things like that. Are they affecting the market that maybe you would want to consider paying some closing costs? How about other alternatives? How about appliances? May leave the washer and dryer, a little negotiating tool. How about a home warranty? I'm not a fan of those home warranties, but for some in the housing market, if you have an older home or, as people are cash strapped on certain things right now, or it's a young couple just getting into their home, these may be advantages that set your home apart from the other homes. As the market slows, what we can do, number one, don't be impatient. And that's easy to say. Be patient with the market. Understand that we're carrying longer days on market. Work with your agent. Have a monthly market plan. Revisit, have conversations. It's important, right? There's a lot going on, especially if you're moving. And understanding that conversations with your agent every week, maybe even twice a week, I'd say at least every 2 weeks, having those conversations. Look at the housing market. One of the biggest things that you can do now is look at our pendings. Pendings are today's market, what people are willing to pay. And understand the housing market today, where we're at is what a buyer is willing to pay. So if we're not where we want to be, we need to look at repositioning. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this show. Appreciate the time. Have an amazing weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you back next weekend.